Hannah Loyal was a quiet nurse, a small, steady presence in the loud, sprawling metropolis of Kenta City. She operated in a world of her own, separate from the easy chatter and casual gossip that filled the corridors of Apex Care Hospital. She did not talk much, a fact that seemed to unsettle some of her colleagues. She didn't engage in the arguments about hospital politics, nor did she participate in the whispers about which doctor was dating which pharmacist. While other nurses gathered at the station, their voices bright and sharp as they discussed new doctors, the dramas of wealthy patients, or the latest lipstick shades, Tana found it all to be useless noise. That chatter, she often thought to herself while changing a dressing, couldn't lower a fever. It couldn't clean a wound, and it certainly couldn't offer a single moment of comfort to a frightened heart in the middle of the night. It was just air, filling a space that craved silence and efficiency. She didn't wear the loud, colorful makeup that seemed to be an unspoken part of the uniform for others, nor did she chase the attention of the wealthy VIP patients who frequented the hospital's exclusive wings. She was, by all accounts, simple, but her simplicity was a form of dedication. Tana was always the first to arrive for her shift, her white uniform impeccably clean, her shoes quiet on the polished linoleum floors. She was always the last to leave, often staying late to finish her charts or to sit for a few extra minutes with a patient who seemed lonely. People called her boring. She knew they did. She heard the whispers, the soft titters. Tana, oh, she's just quiet. Some of the younger nurses, the ones with bright, colorful scrubs and even louder laughs, would giggle when she passed. They mistook her focus for arrogance, her silence for judgment. But Hannah didn't mind. She wasn't there to make friends. She was there to do a job she considered sacred. Her mother, long past, had instilled this in her. If you care for others with clean hands and a clean heart, her mother used to say, her voice gentle but firm as she braided Hannah's hair, God will reward you. So Hannah carried those words like a song in her heart, a private melody in the midst of the hospital's constant noise. She kept her hands clean, scrubbing them until they were raw. She tried to keep her heart just as clean, focusing only on the work, on the patients, on the rhythm of life and death that played out in these sterile rooms. She worked at Apex Care Hospital, a tall, imposing white building that pierced the skyline of Kenta City. It was a place of gleaming surfaces and advanced technology, where the rich, the powerful, the politicians, and the oil tycoons came when their bodies inevitably failed them. Most of the staff, from the cleaners to the top surgeons, were acutely aware of this. They put on a different face for the VIP patients, their smiles wider, their voices more subservient. But Hannah was the same with everybody. She treated the president's cousin with the same gentle efficiency as she treated the cleaner's wife. She talked gently, explaining procedures in simple terms. She cleaned wounds with meticulous care, her touch firm but kind. She always made sure the old, forgotten patients in the general ward took their medicine on time, even if it meant she had to sit with them for half an hour, coaxing them to swallow. One evening, this predictable rhythm was broken. The clouds over Kenta City had been heavy all day, a bruised purple-gray that smothered the sky. The air was thick, humid, and still, carrying the promise of violence. Then the rain began. It was not a gentle shower, it was an angry deluge, hammering against the reinforced windows of the hospital as if trying to break in. The wind pushed against the glass with a low moan, and thunder growled in the distance, a deep, vibrating threat that seemed to shake the very foundations of the tall white building. Hannah had just finished checking the drip on an elderly patient in the general ward. She was calmly noting the fluid level on the chart when the emergency bell rang. It wasn't the standard chime for a minor issue. It was the loud, piercing, repetitive alarm, reserved for the high-priority ICU wing. A sound that cut through the drumming of the rain and made every nurse on the floor freeze. Prepare the VIP suite. Nurse Ada, the shift supervisor, shouted, her voice tight with stress as she clutched a walkie-talkie. "Prepare it now. We're getting a special case. A big one." The hallway exploded into frantic motion. It was, Hannah thought, like watching an anthill that had just been kicked. Nurses rushed from rooms, their rubber-soled shoes squeaking loudly on the polished floors. The air of professional calm evaporated, replaced by a tangible electric panic. In a bizarre and practiced reflex, two nurses started spraying perfumed air freshener in the hallway, as if to mask the scent of emergency. The sudden cloying smell of artificial lavender mixed poorly with the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic that always hung in the air. Hannah watched as others, catching their reflections in the glass partitions of the nurses' station, quickly adjusted their wigs, patting down hair, or reapplying a quick layer of lip gloss. They were preparing for a performance, not a medical crisis. Hannah simply sighed, a small, almost inaudible sound. She calmly disposed of her used gloves in the biohazard bin, walked to the sink, and began to wash her hands with practiced, methodical precision. Soap, water, scrubbing for a full 30 seconds, rinsing, drying. The panic of others was inefficient. It led to mistakes. She pulled on a fresh pair of gloves and walked with steady, unhurried steps toward the ICU wing, a small island of calm in the spreading sea of chaos. Minutes later, the wail of sirens grew from a distant scream to an overwhelming roar, cutting through the sound of the rain. A single black, heavily armored SUV, the kind that screamed money and power far louder than any ambulance, screeched to a halt right in front of the emergency entrance, completely ignoring the designated ambulance bay. The red and blue lights of its escort vehicle washed over the rain-slicked pavement, making the falling drops look like scattered jewels, or perhaps drops of blood. Two men, built like industrial refrigerators, and dressed in sharp black suits that were already soaked, jumped out before the vehicle had even fully stopped. Their eyes scanned the entrance, the lobby, the staff. Their hands were conspicuously inside their jackets. Another man, thinner and wearing dark glasses despite the night, stepped out and spoke urgently into a discreet earpiece, his face a mask of controlled tension. Then, the back doors of the SUV flew open. A stretcher was pulled out with an urgent, practiced efficiency that spoke of private medical teams. On it lay a man. He was unconscious. Tubes were already inserted into his nose. His pristine white kaftan, the traditional robe, was ruined. It was stained with a dark, spreading patch of blood on the upper chest. His eyes were shut tight, his face pale and slack. His broad chest, usually so imposing, rose and fell in slow, shallow movements that looked agonizingly weak. Is that who I think it is?" Nurse Funky whispered, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide, her freshly applied lip gloss forgotten. "Chief Emeka Okoro," another nurse breathed, blinking rapidly as if the sight of the man in such a state was a physical blow. "The billionaire. The oil tycoon. The one with 6 houses in Mama," someone else added, their voice a mixture of awe and raw fear. "The one whose family was fighting in court just last year over his assets. They were saying he was hiding money." The entire hallway seemed to freeze for a single charged second. The normal sounds of the hospital, the beeping monitors, the rolling carts, the rain, all faded. The doctors, recognizing the gravity of the situation, broke the spell and ran toward the stretcher, shouting orders. The matron herself, Mrs. Ebube, a formidable woman who rarely left her office after 5 p.m., was already coming down the main staircase, her face a mask of grim efficiency. The air was suddenly thick with tension, with unspoken questions, with the frantic energy of a high-stakes crisis. Whispers, frantic phone calls, and the sharp clicking of the matron's heels filled the air. But in all the noise, all the chaos, all the speculation, one thing was terribly, undeniably clear to Hannah as she watched from the entrance of the ICU. The man on the stretcher, Chief Emeka Okoro, might not survive the night. They placed him in the specialized ICU suite, a room that felt less like a hospital and more like a high-tech fortress. The transition from the chaotic hallway to the sterile cocoon was immediate. Doctors, specialists in cardiology and trauma worked fast, their voices low and urgent as they barked orders and read monitors. The air filled with the steady, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor, the soft, mechanical puff hiss of the ventilator, and the low hum of the filtration system that kept the air surgically clean. The matron, Mrs. E. Bube, had called for extra staff, but it was clear this was a look but don't touch situation unless you were a specialist. The hallway outside the glass doors of the suite remained tense. By midnight, the storm of activity had subsided, just as the thunderstorm outside had finally exhausted itself. The rain softened to a drizzle, and the hallway fell quiet. The family members who had arrived in a second, equally expensive-looking car had been told to leave. They had argued, their voices sharp and entitled, but the matron had been firm. He is critically unstable. There is nothing you can do here but obstruct. Now, two stoic security guards, part of the chief's personal detail, stood by the door. They looked less like hospital visitors and more like stone statues, their dark suits blending into the dimmed lighting of the corridor. The hospital's own nurses took turns watching over him, rotating in 30-minute intervals. They would go in, check the monitors, note the readouts on the chart, and leave, their faces pale with the stress of caring for such a prominent and flammable patient. By 2 a.m., most of the ancillary staff had gone to the break room to rest, their whispers finally fading. But Hannah Loyal was still awake. She had not taken a break. She sat quietly on a metal stool just inside the room, near the edge of the large, complicated bed. She was an anchor in the sterile sea of technology. She looked at the man's face, truly looked at him for the first time. In the chaos of his arrival, he had been a problem to be solved, a set of vital signs to be stabilized. Now, in the deep quiet of the night, he was just a man. There was a long, thin scar that cut diagonally near his left eyebrow, a white line against his dark skin. It was an old wound, one that spoke of a life lived long before the billions. His beard, usually impeccably trimmed in the photos she had seen in newspapers, was now unkempt, streaked with more gray than she expected. His lips, pale and dry from the oxygen mask, were parted slightly. He looked vulnerable. All the power, all the houses, all the oil. Hannah thought, and here you are, just like any other man, unable to breathe on your own. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Clean hands, clean heart. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate, designed not to disturb the fragile peace of the room. She dipped a small cotton swab in a cup of sterile warm water. She gently, meticulously, cleaned the small traces of dried blood and residue from around his nose and mouth, where the emergency team had worked. It was a small act of dignity. As she was carefully dabbing his skin, the door to the suite opened with a soft whoosh. Hannah didn't jump. She simply turned. Matron Ebube stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face a mixture of exhaustion and surprise. She paused, her eyes adjusting to the dim light, and focused on Hannah. "Nurse Loyal, you're still here?" the matron asked. Her voice was low but held its usual sharp edge. Hannah nodded, dropping the used swab into the disposal bin. "He hasn't moved at all. I'm watching his vitals." The matron stepped fully into the room, her gaze sweeping from the monitors to the patient and then back to Hannah. "The machines are watching his vitals, nurse. That is what they are for. The night shift rotation is in place. The machines see numbers," Matron Hannah replied quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "They don't always see the small things. His breathing is shallow." The matron looked at her for a long moment, a truly assessing stare. "You're a strange girl, Hannah," she said, not unkindly. "All the other nurses are half terrified to even be in this room. You don't even flinch around people like him." She gestured to the unconscious form. Do you have any idea how powerful this man is? His family could buy this hospital 3 times over just to inconvenience a rival. Hana looked from the matron back to Chief Okoro. I just see a sick man, she said simply. The matron didn't reply to that. Perhaps there was no reply. She let out a slow breath, shaking her head slightly. Well, don't be a hero. It doesn't pay extra. Go home when your shift is over. She turned and walked out, the door hissing shut behind her, leaving Hana once more alone in the silence, with only the beeping machines for company. Hana stayed. She stayed until the rain finally stopped, leaving a heavy silence broken only by the rhythmic puff and hiss of the ventilator. She stayed until the first gray light of dawn began to press against the windows, a pale, watery light that signaled the end of the long night. She stayed until the sterile, artificial birdsong of the clock on the wall ticked past 6 a.m. Her back ached, her eyes burned with fatigue. She stood up slowly, stretching her stiff muscles, preparing to give her report to the incoming day shift. She was turning to check the IV drip one last time when something happened. It was a flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. She froze. The man's fingers, which had been lying still and limp on the white sheet, twitched. Hana moved closer, her exhaustion vanishing in a rush of adrenaline. She stared at his hand. It twitched again, a small involuntary spasm. His eyelids, which had been sealed shut, fluttered. His breathing, so long dictated by the machine, hitched. A small dry sound, half cough, half groan, escaped his lips, and then his eyes opened. They opened slowly, painfully. They were not the sharp, commanding eyes of a billionaire. They were weak, dull, and clouded with confusion. They drifted aimlessly around the room, at the ceiling, at the tubes, before they finally settled and focused directly on her. His lips moved. A dry, rasping sound emerged, but no words. Hana leaned in, her voice automatically dropping into a calm, reassuring tone. Sir, he stared at her. His lips parted again. Do you know your name? She asked gently. He blinked once. It was slow, deliberate. Yes. She placed a light, professional hand on his shoulder. His gown was thin, and she could feel the bones beneath. You are safe. You're in the hospital. Apex Care Hospital. You came in last night. You were unconscious. His eyes darted around again, this time with a flicker of understanding, and perhaps fear. Can you speak? She asked. His voice was a dry, cracked whisper, barely audible over the hum of the equipment. Water. She moved quickly, pouring a small amount of water into a cup and dipped a sterile sponge applicator into it. She gently moistened his lips, then brought the straw to his mouth, supporting his head with her other hand. He took a few small, difficult sips. He coughed lightly, a painful, rattling sound. Then he whispered again, a little stronger this time. Who are you? I'm Hana, she said clearly. I'm a nurse. I've been watching over you tonight. He stared at her for a long time. It was not a look of fear, not a look of pride, but something in between. It was an assessment. Even in this state, he was measuring her, reading her. Then his eyes hardened for a fraction of a second, and he spoke, his voice low and urgent. Don't let them near me. Hana blinked, confused. Who? The doctors? He shook his head, a tiny pained movement. Them. Your family, sir? Your people? Anyone? He rasped, his eyes locking onto hers. Family, staff. I don't trust them. There was a long silence, filled only by the beep, beep, beep of the monitor. He looked away from her, up at the ceiling, as if gathering his strength. Then his gaze snapped back to her. You, he whispered. You were here. You sat with me. Hana didn't know what to say. This was not a situation covered in her training. She just nodded slowly. I want you to stay, he said. It was not a request. I will inform the matron, she said gently. And the doctor? No, he said, his voice finding a new surprising thread of steel. Just you, please. She looked into his tired, desperate, and commanding eyes. And in that moment, Hana Loyal made a decision that would change everything. All right, she said softly. I'll stay. From that moment, everything changed. Hana's decision to stay was not a formal one. She didn't clock out, she simply remained. The day shift arrived, bringing with it the bright, efficient, and noisy energy of the morning. Nurses bustled past the ICU suite, casting curious, slightly fearful glances at the two private security guards who remained posted outside. Hana, running on little more than adrenaline and a deep-seated sense of duty, simply continued her work. She monitored his vitals, adjusted his drip, and spoke to him in low, calming tones. When his breathing hitched or his eyes flickered with panic, she was a silent, steady presence in the room. Around 10 a.m., the calm was shattered. The sound of multiple, expensive-sounding shoes clicking rapidly on the linoleum floor approached. Voices, low and urgent, grew louder, culminating in a sharp, demanding tone at the nurse's station just outside the ICU wing. "We are here to see Chief Okoro." Immediately, the voice was male, accustomed to being obeyed. Hana heard the matron's voice, firm but respectful. "Gentlemen, please, he is in critical condition. He is not to be disturbed. The doctor's orders are explicit. We are his family," another voice snapped. "Those orders do not apply to us. Open the door." Hana stood up from her stool, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. She looked at Emeka. His eyes were closed, but his jaw was tight. He was listening. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, sir," the matron said, her voice rising slightly. "He is my patient. His health comes first." The door to the suite hissed open and the matron stepped inside, looking flustered. Behind her, pushing past, were three men in impeccably tailored suits that probably cost more than Hana's yearly salary. They smelled strongly of expensive cologne, a scent that felt obscene in the sterile room. Following them was a woman in towering high heels, her face partially obscured by a designer scarf. Her eyes, cold and assessing, sweeping the room and landing on Hana with open disdain. "Who is this?" The first man, the tallest one, demanded, gesturing to Hana. "This is Nurse Loyal," the matron began. "She has been with him." "Dad," the man said, ignoring both women and walking toward the bed. "Dad, it's Bolin, we are here." Chief Emeka Okoro's eyes opened slowly. He stared at his son Bolin. His gaze was flat, cold, and filled with a weariness that went beyond his physical illness. "I said, no one," Emeka rasped, his voice barely audible, but cutting through the tension. Bolin forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, don't be difficult. We were worried. We're here to manage the situation." "Manage," Emeka whispered. He coughed, a dry, painful sound. "Manage my assets. That's unfair," the woman in the scarf said, her voice sharp. "We are here out of concern." Emeka turned his head slowly on the pillow until his eyes met the matron's. "Ibube," he said, his voice gaining a fraction of strength. "Tell them to leave." The family froze. Bolin's face darkened. "We are not going anywhere, if it's not Nurse Hana," Emeka said, his voice now dangerously clear as he locked eyes with his son. "I don't want to see anybody. Get them out." The matron, caught between her powerful patient and his equally powerful family, turned to Bolin. "You heard him. He needs to rest. Your presence is agitating him. Please, wait outside." Bolin stared at his father for a long, silent moment, his jaw working. Then he turned his cold gaze on Hana. He looked at her as if she were something he had found on the bottom of his shoe. He didn't say a word, but his expression was a clear threat. He spun on his heel and stormed out. The others followed like a small, angry flock, their whispers venomous as they passed through the door. The matron let out a shaky breath and turned to Hana. What did you do to him?" she asked, her voice a mixture of awe and terror. "I only stayed," Hana replied, her voice steady. "I was here when he woke up." The matron just shook her head and left, closing the door on the now silent room. For several minutes, the only sound was the steady beep, beep of the monitor. Emeka's breathing was ragged, the confrontation having cost him precious energy. Hana moved to his side, adjusting the oxygen cannula at his nose. He lay still with tired eyes, staring at the perforated tiles of the ceiling. "Do you believe in second chances, Hana?" he asked, his voice so low she almost missed it. She paused, her hand hovering over the IV line. "Sir?" He turned his head to look at her. The anger from the confrontation was gone, replaced by a profound, haunting sadness. "I asked, do you believe people can fix what they broke, even if it's late?" Hana thought for a moment. She thought of her own life, of the patients she'd seen who had pulled through against all odds, of the small victories of the human body. "Yes," she said softly. "I do. I believe in second chances." He closed his eyes. A single small tear escaped the corner of his left eye and traced a path through the gray stubble on his cheek. "Good," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Then, I need yours." The room smelled of antiseptic and something deeper, the metallic tang of fear. The morning sun, which had been bright, was suddenly obscured by a passing cloud, casting the high-tech room into a dim gray light. The heart monitor's rhythmic beep filled the heavy air. Hana sat on the small stool next to Chief Okoro's bed, her hands clasped in her lap. His request hung in the air between them. "Then I need yours." Hours passed. He hadn't said a word since. He just stared at the ceiling, his gaze distant, as if he were watching a film that only he could see. A film playing out on the blank canvas of the hospital room. Hana adjusted the blanket over his chest, checked the fluid in his drip, and quietly recorded his vital signs in the chart. She didn't know what he meant, but something in her heart, a small quiet instinct, told her not to ask. She was a nurse. She was trained to wait, to observe, to listen. She was thinking about her mother's advice. "It's like waiting for rain in the dry season. It will come, but only when the sky is ready." This man's sky was clearly not ready. Suddenly he spoke again, his voice still a low, rough whisper, but clearer now. "Do you know what it's like, nurse?" Hana looked up, startled from her thoughts. "Sir, do you know what it's like?" he repeated, not looking at her. "To sleep in a house full of people, a big house, many rooms, and still feel completely, utterly alone." Hana looked at him. She wasn't sure if he was asking her or just talking to himself. He turned his head slowly on the pillow. The effort was visible. His eyes met hers, and they were filled with a deep, cold emptiness. "You don't. You can't. You still have peace. I can see it. You still smile like someone who has peace." Hana took a small, steadying breath. "Sometimes I cry when I'm alone, sir," she said, her voice soft but not weak. I just don't do it in front of other people." A small corner of his mouth moved. It was not a full smile. It was barely a flicker, a ghost of an expression. "Good," he rasped. "That means you still feel. That means your heart still works." He looked back at the ceiling. "I think I stopped crying 30 years ago, maybe more." A long, uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Hana wondered if she should say something, offer some professional sterile comfort, but he spoke again before she had the chance. "Hana," he said, using her name for the first time. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir," she replied gently, moving back to her stool. "You're Chief Emeka Okoro. You own Okoro Holdings, oil and gas. You are very rich. Is that all?" he asked, his voice flat. "That's all I've heard, sir." He stared at her for a while longer, his gaze intense, as if he were trying to see inside her, to find the angles, the hidden motives. He seemed to find none. He looked away, a small bitter sigh escaping him. "Then you don't know me at all," he whispered. "That's good. That's very good." His hand, thin and marked with ivy bruises, moved across the sheet, reaching for her. His fingers were shaking. Hana instinctively placed her hand over his. His skin was dry and cold. "Don't believe what they tell you about me, Hana," he said, his voice trembling slightly with a sudden desperate energy. "And don't trust them, sir. My family," he clarified, his grip on her hand tightening. "The ones who were just here. They're smiling now. They bring lawyers and pretend to care. But they are waiting, like vultures, waiting for this machine." He nodded toward the heart monitor. to stop beeping, waiting for me to stop breathing. Hana stayed quiet. His grip was surprisingly strong, a desperate bony clutch. They will come, he said, his voice dropping lower, as if sharing a terrible secret. They will pretend to care. Bolan, my first son, he will shout the loudest. But they all want the same thing. My name, my land, my signature on their papers. I don't want anything from you, sir. Hana said, her voice clear and true. I know, he whispered, his grip finally relaxing. He let go of her hand. I know, that's why you are the only one I trust. He closed his eyes, exhausted again. Hana stood up, thinking he had fallen asleep. She turned to check the chart, but his voice stopped her. He asked me why I became a nurse. Hana said softly, her gaze fixed on the IV bag, watching the drops fall one by one. He looked at her, his eyes questioning. My mother, Hana continued, her voice quiet but steady. She died when I was small. She bled too much. During childbirth. It was a long way from the nearest clinic. She paused, the memory still sharp, still painful. They said if someone had reached the hospital earlier, if they had known what to do, she would have lived. She would have been fine. She finally turned to look at him. So I promised myself I would learn. I would learn how to help people live, even if I couldn't save her. Emeka looked at her for a very long time. The beeping of the monitor seemed to fade into the background. He didn't offer pity. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He just watched her, his expression unreadable. Then he whispered, You're not like them. Like who, sir? She asked. The others, he said, his voice laced with a lifetime of bitterness. The ones who smile, but hide knives behind their backs. The ones who come to you only when they need something. She didn't answer. She simply returned to her stool and sat. But deep inside, somewhere in her chest, something was beginning to stir. It was a strange, unfamiliar feeling. Not pity, but connection. A heavy, dangerous connection. She didn't know what it was. Not yet. All she knew was that this man, this powerful, broken man, who had the whole city of Kenta at his feet, had chosen her. Not for her beauty, not for her connections, but for something simpler. Her presence, her silence, her heart. And for the first time she felt the weight of her mother's words not as a song, but as a heavy, profound responsibility. That same afternoon, the fragile peace of the room was broken again. The quiet medical sounds, the beep of the monitor, the hiss of the oxygen, were suddenly violated by a sharp, impatient knock on the door. It was not the polite tap of a doctor or a nurse. It was a summons. Before Hannah could even stand, a junior nurse, looking flustered and intimidated, opened the door slightly. Sir, they insist. The door was pushed open fully, striking the wall with a dull thud. Behind the startled nurse stood Bolan Okoro, his face a mask of controlled fury. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed, his eyes sharp and cold. He didn't wait to be invited in. Beside him, like a shadow, was a thin man in a nondescript gray suit, clutching a black leather folder to his chest, as if it were a shield. The lawyer. Hannah felt an instinctive urge to step in front of the bed, to protect her patient. She could already see the line on Emeka's heart monitor tighten, the rhythmic beep accelerating slightly. 105, 108, 110, Dad, Bolan said. His voice clipped and void of any real warmth. He stepped into the room, bringing with him the aggressive, invasive scent of expensive cologne. It was a smell that didn't belong. A smell of boardrooms and power plays, and it instantly poisoned the sterile air. Dad, it's me, Bolan. We need to talk. Chief Emeka Okoro did not turn his head. He did not open his eyes. He performed the most profound insult possible. He remained perfectly, deliberately still, as if his son were nothing but air. Dad, I flew in from London, Bolan continued, his irritation growing. I left 2 major board meetings. The least you can do is look at me. They told me you weren't doing well, and I find you being guarded by her. Said. Emeka's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. I don't want to see anyone. Bolan forced a smile, a tight, reptilian stretching of the lips. Come on, Dad. Don't be like this. This is important. We have to discuss the company. We have to sign the update on your will. The lawyer is here. I am not your project, Emeka whispered, his eyes still closed. Get out, Dad. Please, be reasonable. Hannah watched the monitor. 115, 118. The strain was becoming dangerous. She had to intervene. Sir, Hannah stood up, placing herself between Bolin and the bed. Her voice was low but firm. Sir, please. Your father needs to rest. His vitals are unstable. This agitation is bad for his heart. Bolin's head snapped toward her. His cold eyes raked over her, from her practical shoes to her simple, tied-back hair. His face twisted in disbelief and contempt. Excuse me, he hissed, stepping closer to her. Who exactly even are you? Are you his nurse, or have you suddenly been promoted to his wife? Is that it? What did he promise you? Hannah's stomach clenched, but she held her ground. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Clean hands, clean heart. This man's words were dirt. They could not touch her. I am his nurse, sir, she said, clearly meeting his gaze. And my primary duty is to my patient's health. You are causing him distress. I must ask you to leave. Well then, nurse, Bolin spat. Why don't you act like one and leave us to our family business? This has nothing to do with you. If she leaves, a cold voice cut through the room. You leave too. Emeka's eyes were open. They were fixed on his son, blazing with a cold, clear fire that Hannah had not seen before. He had raised one hand, his finger trembling as he pointed, not at Bolin, but at the door. Bolin froze, his mouth half open. The lawyer in the gray suit took an involuntary step backward. She stays, Emeka said, his voice weak but absolute. You go. I am not being unfair, Bolin. I am being wise, wiser than you will ever be. Bolin stared at his father. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the slowing beep-beep of the monitor. As Emeka's heart rate began to settle, having won the confrontation, Bolin's face, which had been tight with anger, seemed to crumble. It was not sadness, but the bitter, ugly frustration of being denied. He laughed. It was a short, dry, mirthless sound that chilled the air. He turned to leave, stopping at the door to look back one last time. He's dying, Bolin said, his voice dripping with venom, directed at Hannah. He's dying, and he's giving his heart to a nurse. This is madness. He turned and walked out. The lawyer, after a moment of awkward hesitation, scurried after him. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the suddenly vast, quiet room. Hannah let out a breath. She hadn't realized she was holding. Her knees felt weak. She sat back down on the stool. Emeka stared at the ceiling, his breathing shallow. They think they know me, he whispered, mostly to himself. They only know what I let them see. They only know the signature on the checks. He turned his head on the pillow, his eyes finding hers. The fire was gone, replaced by that deep, profound sadness. You remind me of her. Hannah's brow furrowed. Who, sir? Emera, he said. The name was a sigh, a memory. Silence fell. Hannah waited, but he didn't say more. He just closed his eyes, the exertion of the fight pulling him back under, and he seemed to fall asleep. Hannah waited, watching his chest rise and fall. Emera, the name hung in the air, a question she was afraid to ask. Hours passed. The day shift ended. The evening shift began. Hannah stayed. She ate a small cracker she had in her pocket. She drank some water. The night nurses knew by now not to question her presence. She was the chief's chosen one. The lights in the hospital were dimmed. The night brought a heavy, waiting silence. Emeka had been sleeping for hours, a deep, restorative sleep. Hannah was charting his vitals, her pen scratching quietly in a notebook when his voice, cracked and dry, came out of the darkness. Hannah, she looked up, startled. Sir, you're awake. Do you believe in secrets? He asked. His eyes were open, lucid, and staring at her. She put her pen down. I think everyone has one, sir. A box in their heart they don't open. He nodded slowly. Mine has been locked away for 28 years, but it's time. The lock it's breaking. I can feel it. His voice trailed off, and he took a shallow breath. Time for what, sir? To tell someone, he whispered. To fix what I broke, to right a wrong. Before I go, he looked at her, his gaze so intense, it felt like a physical weight. I need to be sure, Hannah. Sure of what? Sure that you are the one. The one for what, sir? He didn't answer immediately, he just stared, assessing her, searching her. Then with a pained grunt, he pointed a trembling finger toward the floor. Under this bed, there is a bag, a small black one. Please, bring it to me. Hannah's heart began to beat fast. This is it. This was not nursing. This was not in her job description. Boland's words echoed in her head. Probably your money. Was this a trap? Was she being drawn into a war over his will? Clean hands, clean heart. She looked at his eyes. They were not the eyes of a manipulator. They were the eyes of a drowning man. She knelt on the cold, sterile floor. Her fingers brushed against a small, worn leather satchel tucked deep beneath the bed's metal frame. She pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked. Put it here, he instructed, patting the bed beside him. She placed the bag on the white sheets. Open it. Her fingers fumbled with the old brass zipper. It slid open with a rasp. The smell of old paper dust and the faint, sweet scent of long-faded perfume wafted out. Inside, she saw a thick, brown manila envelope, bulging with papers. Next to it, an old, ornate silver key, tied to a faded red ribbon. And on top of it all, an old photograph, its edges softened by time, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. Take that, he whispered, pointing at the photo. She picked it up. It was a picture of a young woman, perhaps no older than 20. She had a soft smile and gentle, kind eyes. Her head was covered in a simple scarf. She was holding a baby, a tiny infant wrapped in a plain cloth, sleeping soundly in her arms. That's her, Emeka said, his voice cracking with an emotion so raw it made Hannah flinch. That's Amara, the only woman I ever loved. Hannah stared at the photo. She's beautiful. She was more than that, he breathed. She was everything. She was my peace, and I left her. I abandoned her. Hannah looked up, confused. Sir, no, let me. I must say this. He struggled for breath. My family, my father, mostly. They said she wasn't good enough. She didn't come from money. She was just a girl from the village. And I was weak. I was a coward. I chose the business. I chose the name. I chose this. He gestured weakly at the tubes and machines that now kept him alive. Hannah listened, her heart aching. He was confessing. I gave her a house, he continued, his voice rambling as the memories flooded back. Far from the city, in Osenle village. I thought it would keep her safe. I told myself I was protecting her. I promised I would return for her. But I never did. He turned his face to her, his eyes red and swimming with unshed tears. She was carrying my child when I left. Hannah, my child. Hannah gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. You had a child with her. He nodded, a single painful movement. A daughter, that baby in the picture. What happened to them? Hannah asked, her voice a whisper. Where are they? I don't know, he said, and the admission seemed to shatter him. I don't know. I've tried to find them. I've paid people. I've searched. I sent cold men. The same kind of men Boland uses. They found nothing. Or maybe they lied to me. And now I am dying. He was quiet, his chest rattling with each breath. Hannah looked down at the key in the bag, then at the photo in her hand. That's the key, he pointed. The key to the house. In Osenle village. That's where she stayed. He fixed his gaze on her, a desperate final plea. I need you to go there, Hannah. Me? Yes. You? Me? Sir. I'm a nurse, she stammered, her mind reeling. I'm not an investigator. I don't know how to do this. Yes, you, he insisted, his hand finding her wrist, his grip surprisingly tight. Because I trust you. Because Boland was right. You have a heart. You'll do it with clean hands. Not for money, not for a name, but for the truth. Hannah sat there, stunned, the weight of his request settling on her. He was asking her to leave her post, to walk into the center of his family's war, to find a ghost from 28 years ago. It was madness. What if What if they're gone? She asked, her voice small. What if the house is empty? What if she— Then at least I tried, he whispered, cutting her off. At least I didn't take this secret to my grave. I have so much, Hannah, but I feel empty. I have cars, and houses, and land, but I have no peace. I want peace. I want peace. I want to see her face again. Or my daughter's. Just once. Before I go. Hannah looked from the dying, broken man in the bed to the smiling, gentle woman in the photograph. She thought of her own mother, lost too soon. She thought of a promise made to help people, to heal. Maybe healing wasn't always about medicine. Maybe this time, it was about this. Clean hands, clean heart. She took a deep breath. In that moment, something inside her clicked into place. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a messenger. She didn't know what she was stepping into. She didn't know who she would find, or what she would discover, or what dangers lay in Osenle village. But she knew one thing. She couldn't say no. She looked him directly in the eyes. I'll go, she said. Hannah did not sleep that night. She couldn't. After leaving Chief Okoro's room, the weight of the leather bag heavy in her hand, the silver key, the faded photo, and the thick envelope feeling like ballast pulling her into a different, deeper world. She had finished her shift in a daze. She had mechanically handed over her charts to the morning nurse, her face a neutral mask, her mind miles away in a place called Osenle village. She walked out of Apex Care Hospital, just as the Kenta City sun was beginning to burn through the morning haze, but she felt no warmth. She felt only a cold, vibrating tension in her stomach. Now, hours later, she sat on her narrow bed in the small, functional flat she rented in a concrete building behind the hospital compound. The city was never truly quiet, but the usual sounds of traffic, shouting vendors, and distant music felt muffled, as if she were hearing them from underwater. On the table in front of her, under the weak yellow light of her single bulb, lay the mission. The photo of Amara and the baby was face up. The woman's gentle smile seemed to mock her, to ask a question Hannah had no answer for. Why you? The silver key lay beside the photo, its ornate top catching the light. It looked ancient, like something from a storybook, not a real key for a real house. Her mind was a storm of shouting voices. What are you doing? This is madness. Boland's face flashed in her memory. His cold, contemptuous eyes, his hissed threat. This is madness. He was right. What if it's a trap? What if this was some elaborate, cruel test by a dying, paranoid billionaire? What if his family is already watching me? What if they followed her from the hospital? She stood up and paced the small room, her bare feet silent on the cool floor. She went to the window and peered through the blinds. The street below was normal. A few men gathered around a tea stall. A woman walked by with a basket on her head. No black SUVs, no men in dark suits. She let out a shaky breath. She was just a nurse. She cleaned wounds. She administered medication. She held the hands of the dying. She was not a spy. She was not a detective. She had never even been to a village like Osenle. But then she remembered Emeka's face, the raw, agonizing regret in his eyes, the way his voice cracked when he said Amara's name, the desperate, bony grip of his hand on her wrist. I want peace, Hannah. I want to see her face again. He hadn't been faking it. She felt it in her bones, in the part of her that recognized true human suffering. He was scared. He was sorry. And he was running out of time. He had trusted her, the quiet nurse, because she was the only person who saw a sick man instead of a bank account. Clean hands, clean heart. This was not about money. This was about a promise. Before dawn, before the first call to prayer echoed over the city, Hannah made her decision. She opened her worn travel bag. She packed 2 simple dresses, a spare headscarf, a notepad, a power bank, and her nursing ID just in case. Then, with trembling hands, she took the thick manila envelope, the key, and the photograph. She wrapped them in one of her dresses and placed them at the very bottom of the bag, beneath everything else. She took the cash Emeka had pressed into her hand. a small folded wad of notes, and tucked it into her shoe. She picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over the matron's name. She felt a sharp, bitter pang of guilt. She hated lying, but the truth was impossible. "Matron, I have to go on a secret mission for Chief Okoro to find his long-lost daughter. They would lock her in a psychiatric ward." She typed the text message, her thumb wincing at the deception. "Good morning, Matron, I am so sorry. A serious medical emergency has happened at home with my family. I must leave for 2 days. I will explain when I return. Please forgive me." She sent it. By 6:30 a.m., his Picturema matron would even be awake to read it. Hana was out the door. She slipped out the back gate of the hospital compound, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Every shadow seemed to move. Every distant car engine sounded like it was slowing down for her. She walked quickly, head down, melting into the early morning crowds heading for the markets and bus parks. She arrived at the Kenta City main motor park, the sprawling, chaotic heart of all movement in and out of the city. The air was already thick and hot, smelling of diesel fumes, roasting corn, dust, and the sharp tang of unwashed bodies. It was a place of pure noise. Drivers or conductors shouted the names of their destinations, their voices hoarse and competing. Asaba, Onitsha, Benin City, fast bus, 1 seat left. Kaduna, Kano, filling up. Osanel, Osanel village. We day go now. Hana's head spun. She clutched her bag tighter and looked for the source of the last shout. A man, thin and vibrating with nervous energy, was waving his arm beside a battered once yellow bus. Its windows were cracked, its tires were worn smooth, and it was already overloaded with bags, sacks of grain, and a live goat tied to the roof rack. This was it. She approached the conductor, her voice small. "Osanel." "Yes, madam. Osanel. Enter, enter. We day go now," he shouted, grabbing her bag. "No, I'll hold it," she said firmly, pulling it back. She paid the fare, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled the crumpled notes from her shoe. The conductor looked at her, then at her clean shoes, but took the money and shrugged. Hana climbed aboard. The heat inside the bus was suffocating. Every seat was taken. The vinyl on her seat was torn, exposing the yellowing foam underneath. She squeezed in between a large woman holding a sleeping baby and an old man chewing on a stick. She put her bag on her lap, wrapping both arms around it. The engine started with a roar of black smoke. The bus lurched, bounced over a pothole, and pulled out into the chaotic Kenta City traffic. Hana stared out the window, watching her life recede. The city faded, but it did not fade gently. It fought to hold on. The tall, gleaming white buildings of the business district gave way to endless sprawling neighborhoods of concrete blockhouses, then to smaller makeshift houses of corrugated tin. The wide, paved roads turned to narrow, crumbling paths. The bus bounced and rattled, the metal frame groaning in protest with every pothole. Dust, fine and red, began to seep in through the cracked window seals, coating her skin, her clothes, her bag. It felt like the land itself was trying to claim her. She didn't speak to anyone. She didn't buy the pure water sachets or the fried plantain chips offered through the window at military checkpoints. She just kept thinking, what if I find nothing? What if Emeka dies while I'm gone? What if Bolin is already there, waiting for me? She closed her eyes, clutching the bag. The journey took hours. The noise of the city was replaced by the rattle of the bus and the occasional loud conversation of the passengers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the driver shouted, "Last stop, Osanel." Hana's eyes snapped open. She was stiff. Her throat was parched. Her legs ached from being cramped. She shuffled off the bus and stepped out onto the ground. The sun hit her face like a physical blow. The air was different. The damp, diesel-filled air of Kenta City was gone. This air was dry, clean, and baking hot, and it was quiet. Osanel village was not a place of noise. There were no paved roads, only paths of hard-packed, deep red soil that seemed to stain everything it touched. Scattered houses, made of mud bricks and glinting zinc roofs, sat amongst clusters of palm and mango trees. Chickens pecked at the dust, walking freely. Two lean goats stood passively under a large mango tree, chewing on fallen leaves. A group of small barefoot children, their voices bright and clear, ran past, rolling a large worn-out tire with a stick. Women, their backs straight and proud, walked by with large buckets of water balanced perfectly on their heads. Hannah stood by the empty, dusty bus stop, holding her bag. She was an alien. Her dress, though simple, was too clean. Her city shoes looked absurd on the red earth. Her eyes, wide and searching, were too curious. She didn't belong here, and everyone who passed her knew it. They stared. They didn't smile. They looked, and then they looked away, whispering to one another. She walked straight to a small, open-air canteen by the roadside, a simple wooden shack with a few benches. An old man, his face a web of deep lines, was frying a kara in a large black pot of sizzling oil. She pulled out the small folded paper Emeka had given her. It had only 2 words on it. Baba Tunde, caretaker. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice sounding too loud in the quiet. The man looked up slowly from his oil, his eyes squinting against the sun. "I am looking. Do you know someone called Baba Tunde?" The man turned his head and spat on the ground. "Baba Tunde?" he asked, his voice rough. "Which Baba Tunde? We have Tunde the carpenter, and we have Baba Tunde the caretaker." Hannah's heart leaped. "The caretaker," she said, a little too eagerly. "Yes, the caretaker." He pointed a long oily finger down a narrow path. "The one with the green door. You will find him there." "Thank you, sir. God bless you," she said. He grunted, and turned back to his frying. Hannah walked. Every step felt like an announcement. "A stranger is here." She passed the village well, where several women were gathered, laughing as they drew water. They fell silent as she passed, their eyes following her. She felt their stares on her back, a physical weight. She reached the house. It was small, neat, and had a bright green door, just as the man had said. A few chickens pecked in the yard. She paused at the low, rickety gate, her heart pounding. This was it. She took a deep breath, stepped into the yard, and knocked gently on the wooden door. She waited. For a moment there was only silence. Then she heard the sound of a wooden chair scraping against a floor. Slow, heavy footsteps approached. The door creaked open. A man stood in the doorway, blocking the light. He was in his 60s, just as Emeka had described. His face was tired, etched with deep lines of sun and work. His hands gripping the doorframe were rough and calloused. He looked at her, his eyes wary and suspicious. "Yes," he said. His voice was not welcoming. "Are you our asterisk? You Mr. Baba Tunde?" Hannah asked. His eyes narrowed. Who was asking? This was the moment. She couldn't just say her name. Emeka had warned her. "Don't use your real name. Don't talk about why you're there." Her hands were shaking. She slowly, deliberately, swung her bag around. She unzipped it, her fingers fumbling. She reached inside, past her dresses, and pulled out the plastic-sleeved photograph of Amara and the baby. She held it out to him, her hand trembling. "I came from Kenta City," she said, her voice a low, nervous whisper. "I was sent by the man who loved this woman. He is very sick. He asked me to find her." Baba Tunde's eyes, which had been hard and mistrustful, flickered down to the photograph. He stared at it. His face froze. The weariness in his expression was instantly replaced by something else: shock, recognition, and a deep, profound sadness. His rough hand reached out, his fingers hovering over the image, not quite daring to touch it. He looked up from the photo, his gaze sharp and urgent, searching her face. "Amara," he breathed. Then he grabbed her arm. "You need to come inside," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Now." before anyone else sees you. Baba Tunde pulled Hana inside his small, neat house and firmly shut the green door, plunging the room into a dim, warm quiet. The world of the dusty, curious village was suddenly locked outside. He gestured to a simple wooden stool. "Sit," he commanded. His voice no longer just wary, but thick with an emotion Hana couldn't yet name. Hana sat, placing her bag at her feet. The room was sparse but impeccably clean. A standing fan whirred slowly in the corner, pushing the warm air around. A religious calendar from 2017 was tacked to the wall, its image faded by the sun. On a small wooden table next to Baba Tunde's main chair, a large, well-worn Bible sat next to an old-fashioned black radio. He didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room, his rough hands turning the plastic-sleeved photograph over and over. He stared at Amara's face, his own expression a mixture of deep, profound grief and a kind of terrible understanding. "Amara," he whispered again, his thumb brushing over the image of the baby. "And little Chioma." Hana's breath caught. He knew the baby's name. "You said," the man. Baba Tunde finally looked up, his eyes sharp. "You said Emeka sent you. Chief Emeka Okoro." "Yes," Hana said, her voice low. "He's very sick, at Apex Care Hospital in Kenta City. He may not have much time. He asked me to find her." Baba Tunde nodded slowly, a deep, tired gesture that seemed to come from his very bones. "I knew this day would come," he said, his voice heavy. "I prayed it would, and I prayed it would not." "You were the caretaker," Hana stated, remembering Emeka's note. "I still am," he replied, his gaze dropping back to the photo. "He paid me well all those years ago. He set up an account at the bank in the next town. Money arrived every month, for 28 years. Money to keep the house clean, to sweep the compound, to cut the grass. He paid for a house no one lived in." "No one lives there?" Hana asked. "No," he said, a strange, haunted look in his eyes. "Not for a very, very long time. Amara, she lived there for almost 3 years. After he left, she waited." He paused, and his voice grew bitter. "She waited for him to keep his promise. He never came. She left. One day," Baba Tunde said, finally sitting down in his chair, "she just left. No goodbye, no note, just gone. She packed her bags, took the child and vanished." "But why?" Hana pressed gently. "Men," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, his eyes darting toward his own door, as if they might be listening, even now. "Men from the city came. Like you but not like you. They came in a big black car, sharp suits. They didn't smile. They asked questions around the village. They offered money for information." His face darkened. Amara was smart. She saw them before they saw her. She hid. She knew they were not sent for a reunion. They were sent to make a problem go away. Hana's blood ran cold. This confirmed everything Emeka had feared. He hadn't just been paranoid, he had been right. His own people, his own family, had likely been working against him even then. After that, Baba Tunde continued. She was terrified. She knew he wasn't coming back. She knew she wasn't safe, so she ran. "Did she ever come back?" Hana asked, her heart sinking. "Did you ever see her again?" "Never," he said. "The money kept coming, so I kept working. I kept the house clean. I waited. I thought maybe one day he would come himself, but he never did." Hana reached into her bag. Her hand, which had been trembling, was now steady. This was real. This was a true deep wound. She pulled out the ornate silver key, still tied to its faded red ribbon. Baba Tunde's eyes widened slightly. "That's it," he whispered. "That's her key. He gave it to me," Hana said. "He kept it all these years." She stood up. "Can you take me there? To the house?" He looked at the key, then at her. He seemed to be making a decision. Finally, he gave a single firm nod. "Yes," he said. "It is time. It is past time. Someone must finally see." He grabbed an old woven cap from a peg on the wall and placed it on his head. He stepped outside, and Hana followed him. They walked in silence. The curious eyes of the village were still on them, but Baba Tunda's presence seemed to act as a shield. He was respected. No one approached. They walked past the well, past the small farms, where men were tending yams, past a dilapidated school building, where the sound of children shouting their multiplication tables drifted on the hot, dry air. Finally, they reached the very edge of the village, where the cultivated land gave way to thicker, untamed bushes. Tucked behind a line of tall, flowering hibiscus was a quiet compound. The gate was made of corrugated metal, and it was rusted deep orange at the edges. The walls, which had once been a cheerful cream color, were now faded and peelings stained red by years of dust. It looked forgotten. Baba Tundes pulled a large, simple iron key from his pocket and unlocked the heavy padlock on the gate. The metal shrieked in protest as he pushed it open, the sound unnaturally loud in the midday stillness. They stepped in. The compound was a paradox. The grass had been recently cut. The path leading to the house was swept clean, free of leaves and debris. But the air itself, the air felt still. It felt heavy, as if time itself had paused inside these walls 25 years ago and refused to restart. There were no birds singing in the trees here. There was no sign of life. Just the oppressive, waiting silence. Hana walked up the 2 short steps to the front door. It was made of heavy wood, its blue paint chipped. The silver key felt cold in her clammy hand. Her fingers shook as she pushed the key into the lock. It was stiff. She had to jiggle it, her heart pounding with a strange mixture of dread and anticipation. Click. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. The mechanism turned. She pushed the door open. It swung inward on silent, well-oiled hinges, a testament to Baba Tunde's care. A rush of air came out to meet her. It was not the smell of rot or decay. It was the smell of dust, dry wood, and something else, something sweet and powdery, the ghost of a long-faded perfume. It was the smell of frozen time. She stepped inside. The living room was simple. A brown sofa, its cushions still plump, sat against one wall. A small dining table, with 2 chairs, stood by the window. On the table was a hand-crocheted doily, yellowed with age, but clean. The curtains, made of a bright floral Ankara fabric, were drawn, casting the room in a dim, sepulchral light. It looked exactly as if someone had just stepped out for a moment and never returned. "Did she live here long?" Hana asked, her voice a whisper. It felt wrong to speak loudly here. "Almost 3 years. Baba Tunde replied, standing at the doorway, as if afraid to enter. He would come, in the beginning, in his big, dark car. He would stay for a weekend. He was happy here. I have never seen a man so happy. And then he stopped coming, and she was alone." Hana walked slowly to a wooden shelf on the wall. It was covered in a fine layer of dust that Baba Tunde's weekly cleanings couldn't quite erase. There were framed photos. Amara, holding the baby Chioma, beaming at the camera. Amara, sitting under a tree, reading a book. Amara, smiling with someone whose arm was around her, but the person themselves had been carefully, deliberately cropped out of the frame. "She never came back," Baba Tunde said from the door. "Not once. After the men from the city came, she packed and she left. I came one Friday to clean, and the door was unlocked. The house was empty, except for one room." Hana turned, her heart quickening. "A room?" "Yes," he nodded. "At the end of the hallway. She locked it before she left. I never opened it. The key he paid me to use. It was only for the front door and the gate, not for that room." "Where is it?" Hana asked, her voice tight. He led her down the short, dark hallway. At the very end was a plain wooden door, no different from any other, but it felt different. It felt final. Hana held up the silver key in her hand, the one from Emika's bag, the one tied with the red ribbon. This key, it wasn't for the front door. Her hand was trembling so hard she could barely aim. She took a deep breath. Clean hands, clean heart. She slid the silver key into the keyhole. It fit perfectly. She turned it. Click. The sound was sharp, brittle, like a bone breaking. The lock was undone. She pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick, heavy, and hot. It had been sealed for decades. Dust motes, thick as snow, danced in the single sharp beam of sunlight that pierced the gloom from a crack in the curtains. The bed was neatly made, covered with a simple white sheet, and on the walls, pinned with old rusty tacks, were pictures, drawings, children's drawings, made with crayon. A bright yellow, misshapen sun, a lopsided flower, and one right by the bed, of 3 figures, a tall man, a woman in a dress, and a tiny child between them, all holding hands. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. He never saw this, she whispered. She stepped further into the room. A small wooden drawer stood beside the bed. On top of it, neatly folded, was a scarf, a blue and white patterned scarf, the exact same one Amara was wearing in the photograph. Hannah reached out and touched it. The fabric was brittle, but clean. She pulled open the drawer. Inside, it was full, not of clothes but of paper, letters, dozens of them. They were tied in small bundles with bits of string. All of them were addressed, in neat, cursive handwriting, to Chief Emeka Okoro, Okoro Holdings, Kenta City. None of them had stamps. None of them had been sent. Hannah's hands trembled. She gently picked up the bundle on top. She untied the string. The paper was dry and crackled. She unfolded the first letter. My dearest Emeka, it has been 6 months since you left. I waited. I told myself you were busy, that the city was holding you. I believed your words. But the days passed, and our daughter, our Chioma, she asks every day, where is Daddy? I hold her and I kiss her, but I don't know what to tell her anymore. Please, my love, just one word. Hannah blinked back tears. She opened another, dated a year later. The handwriting was angrier, sharper. Your men came today. They did not ask for me. They asked about the woman. They offered money, but their eyes were cold. They were not sent by you. They were sent by them, the ones you feared. I will not let them touch what is ours. Emeka, I will not let them take my daughter. You made me a promise. Where are you? She was so angry, Hannah whispered, but she still loved him. Yes, Baba Tunda said from the doorway. He was watching her, his face a mask of old terrible grief. Hannah looked back into the drawer. There was something else, under the letters. A small carved wooden box. She lifted it out. It was light. She opened the lid. Inside were a few treasures, a mother's sacred things, a pair of tiny pink hand-knitted baby booties, a single small worn-out pink shoe, a handmade doll with one button eye missing, and under it all a single folded, official document. It was cream-colored, with the official seal of the Osendal local government. Her heart stopped. She knew what it was, before she even opened it. She unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the typed letters, blurred by her tears. Certificate of birth. Name Chioma. Amara Nbubize. Date of birth. July 12, 1994. Mother's name Amara Nbubize. Father's name Emeka Okoro. Hannah covered her mouth with her hand, a choked sob escaping. It was real. The child was real. She had a name. She had a father, and it was here, in black and white, the proof that Bolan and his family had tried to erase. She's real, Hannah whispered, the paper shaking in her hand. She's alive. She has a name. Chioma. She turned to Baba Tunda, her eyes wide with a new, fierce determination. She's real. I have to find her, Baba Tunda. I have to find Chioma. Hannah stood in the small locked room, the air thick with the dust of sealed-off decades. The birth certificate, a single folded piece of cream-colored paper, felt impossibly heavy in her hand. Chioma Amara Nbubize. Father Emeka Okoro. It was no longer a ghost story. It was a fact, typed and stamped by the local government. She was real, not just a baby in a faded photograph, but a woman somewhere out in the world carrying this story inside her. Hannah turned, the paper held like a relic, and faced Baba Tunde, who still stood in the doorway, his face a mask of old, settled grief. Baba Tunde, Hannah's voice was low and urgent, vibrating with a new, fierce energy. She's real. She has a name. Chioma. She folded the certificate with meticulous care and placed it, along with the photo and the letters, back into her bag. I have to find her. Amara ran, You said she ran. Where did she go? How can I find Chioma? Babatunde sighed, a long, rattling sound that seemed to carry the weight of the whole dusty house. He shook his head slowly. Child, that will be hard. Very hard. He stepped back out into the hallway, as if the locked room's memories were too much for him. Hana followed, pulling the door shut, the click of the lock sealing the past once more. This village, Osunle, he continued, walking back toward the living room. It is a quiet place. People here, we mind our own business. It is how we survive. When Amara left, she left. She didn't want to be found. She was running from those men. She would not have told anyone where she was going, but someone must have known. Hana insisted, following him, her footsteps echoing his. She had a child. She couldn't have just vanished. She must have had a friend, someone she trusted, someone she spoke to. Babatunde stopped in the middle of the living room, stroking his gray beard. He stared at the drawn curtains, lost in thought. She was very quiet, very private. She didn't mix much. After he stopped coming, she was ashamed, I think, and afraid. He paused, his eyes lighting with a flicker of memory. But yes, there was one person. Hana held her breath. Who? The old woman, the midwife, the one who helped her deliver the baby. Mama Bizi. He said the name with a mixture of reverence and fear. Mama Bizi is the root of this village. She has been here since the earth was new. She sees everything. She knows every secret. She loved Amara, like a daughter. Is she still alive? Hana asked, her heart hammering. Oh, she is alive. Babatunde gave a small dry laugh. Mama Bizi will outlive us all. She helped Amara with the baby. She brought them food. If anyone in this world saw where Amara went, if anyone received a letter or a message, it would be her. Where is she? Can you take me to her? Babatunde looked at Hana, a new assessment in his eyes. Listen to me, child, he said, his voice serious. This is not like talking to me. I am just a caretaker. Mama Bizi, she is the gatekeeper. She is old, but her mind is sharp, like a new razor blade. She does not suffer fools, and she despises people from the city. She believes the city is what destroyed Amara. I am not here to hurt anyone, Hana said, her voice steady. I'm here to heal a wound. He is dying. Babatunde, her father. That may not matter to her, he said. She loved Amara, and she loved that child. She protected them. If she thinks you are one of them, another lawyer, another liar sent by the family, she will not just close the door. She will curse the ground you walk on. You must be careful what you say. I will only tell her the truth, Hana replied. Babatunde stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then let us see if the truth is enough. He grabbed his cap. Come, I will take you, but I will not speak for you. She must see your heart for herself. The sun was high now, a relentless white eye burning over Osunle. The heat was a physical weight, pressing down on them. The red earth shimmered, as if the ground itself were alive and breathing heat. Hana walked beside Babatunde, her bag clutched to her side. The village felt different now, no longer just quiet, it felt watchful. The few people they passed, a woman carrying firewood, two men mending a fishing net, nodded respectfully to Babatunde, but their eyes lingered on Hana, full of suspicion and silent questions. Hana's mind raced. What if she refuses to talk? What if she's dead too? What if she tells me Chioma is gone? Imika is running out of time. I am running out of time. We are here, Babatunde said, stopping. They had turned down a narrow path lined with flowering hibiscus bushes. Ahead was a small, neat compound, with walls of peeling white paint. A small clay kitchen hut stood to the side, a thin wisp of wood smoke rising from its roof. And just as Babatunde had described it to her on the walk over, tied to a tree near the gate, was a large, stubborn-looking red goat, chewing lazily on a clump of grass. This is Mama Bizi's house, he said. Remember, do not lie, and show respect. Hana nodded, her throat suddenly dry. She stepped up to the low wooden gate and knocked gently. There was no answer, only the sound of the goat chewing. She knocked again, louder this time. "Hello? Good afternoon?" A moment passed. Then an old, rough voice called from inside, sharp as gravel. "Who is it? What do you want?" I am looking for Mama Beezy," Hannah called out. The gate creaked open, just wide enough for a face to peer out. An old woman stepped out slowly, leaning heavily on a carved walking stick. Her head was wrapped in a faded blue scarf, and her face was a beautiful map of deep, intricate wrinkles. But it was her eyes that held Hannah captive. They were sharp, bright, and alert, like two small black lanterns, and they immediately raked over Hannah, taking in her city dress, her clean shoes, her nervous face. The old woman's expression was one of instant, profound disapproval. "I am Mama Beezy," she said, her voice firm. "Who are you?" She looked past Hannah and saw Baba Tunde standing back on the path. "Ah, Tunde, it is you, and you have brought a stranger to my gate, a city woman. Why?" Baba Tunde bowed his head slightly. "Good afternoon, Mama. This woman, she is not from here. She is asking about Amara." The air went still. Mama Beezy's face, which had been merely suspicious, froze into a hard, angry mask. Her grip on her walking stick tightened until her knuckles went white. "Amara?" she hissed. "Amara is gone. We do not speak that name here, and we especially do not speak it to strangers from the city." She turned her sharp eyes back to Hannah. "Who are you? What business do you have with that poor girl's memory?" "My name is Hannah," Hannah said, her voice shaking slightly, but she held the old woman's gaze. "I came from Kenta City. I was sent by Emeka Okoro." It was like throwing a stone. "Emeka." The old woman spat the name onto the red dust. That name, that coward, that man who broke her heart and left her to the jackals. "Get out." She raised her walking stick and pointed it at Hannah. "Get out of my yard. After 28 years he sends someone. He sends you. It is too late. Tell him it is too late. Tell him to take his blood money to his grave. Please," Hannah said, taking a step forward, her hands raised in supplication. "Please, Mama. Listen, he is dying. I promise you, he is dying. He is in the hospital. He is on machines." "Good," Mama Beezy snapped. "Let him die. He let Amara die every day for years. He didn't send a lawyer," Hannah said, her voice desperate but clear. "He didn't send one of his cold men. He sent me. I am a nurse. I am his nurse. I am the one watching him die." This stopped the old woman. Her arm, which had been raised to chase Hannah away, paused. "A nurse?" she said, her eyes narrowing, studying Hannah in a new light. "You are his nurse?" "Yes." Hannah fumbled with her bag, her hands shaking. "He kept this. He told me he never forgot her. He told me he loved her." She pulled out the plastic-sleeved photograph of Amara and the baby. "He kept this by his bed. He sent me to find her." Mama Beezy's hard expression faltered, her eyes fixed on the photograph in Hannah's hand. She took an involuntary step closer, her gaze locked on Amara's smiling face. Her own face, so hard a moment before, seemed to crumble, softening with a deep, ancient pain. She reached out a trembling, wrinkled hand and her finger touched the plastic sleeve. "He kept this," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Yes," Hannah said, pressing her advantage gently. "He is dying, Mama. He is in so much pain. Not just his body, his soul. He told me everything. He called himself a coward. He said he was weak. He regrets it all. He just wants to see his daughter, before he dies. He wants to see Chioma." The name landed with the force of a physical blow. Mama Beezy snatched her hand back from the photo, as if it were fire. Her eyes snapped to Baba Tunde. "You took her to the house," she accused him. "She had the key, Mama," Baba Tunde said quietly, from the path. "Not my key. His key, the silver key, the one for the locked room." This was the final piece. Mama Beezy stared at Hannah. A long, heavy, unblinking stare that seemed to last an eternity. She was looking past Hannah's clothes, past her face, and deep into her heart, searching for the lies, for the angle, for the greed. Hannah held her breath, meeting that gaze, letting her see. Finally the old woman nodded. A single sharp dip of her chin. She turned and hobbled back into her yard. "Come inside," she ordered, her voice rough again, "and close the gate. Tundi, you too. This is a conversation the birds do not need to hear." Hana quickly followed her into the small dim sitting room. It was clean and smelled of wood smoke and dried herbs that hung from the rafters. A small old sewing machine sat in the corner. Mama Beezy sat down heavily on a wooden chair, placing her stick on the floor beside her. She gestured for Hana and Baba Tundi to sit on a low bench. "So," Mama Beezy said, her sharp eyes fixed on Hana. "Emeka Okoro, he finally remembers her. Now that his foot is in the grave, and he is afraid of God's judgment." Hana sat forward, clasping her hands. "Mama, please, he wants to ask for forgiveness. Is she? Amara is dead, child," the old woman said flatly. The words hit Hana like a punch, stealing her breath. "Too late. I told you it was too late. She's gone. She died 6 years ago, in the next town. She was tired. The struggle, it was too hard for her. She worked her fingers to the bone, cleaning, sewing, scrubbing floors, anything to feed Chioma, to send her to school. Her heart, it just gave out. She died in her sleep, as tired as a person can be." Tears streamed down Hana's face. "Oh God," she whispered, "I'm too late. He'll never see her again." "No," Mama Beezy said, her voice softening just a fraction. "He won't." She paused. "But he did not just ask for Amara. He asked for the child." Hana wiped her tears, looking up, her hope surging back. "Chioma, is she?" "Chioma is alive," Mama Beezy said, "but she is not like her mother. Amara was soft like water. She loved too easily. Chioma, she is hard, she is like stone. She is full of her father's fire, and all of her mother's pain. She remembers everything, child. She remembers the nights her mother cried herself to sleep. She remembers the hunger. She remembers the shame. She hates the name Okoro. She hates the man who left them, the man who let her mother die tired and alone. But she deserves to know," Hana pleaded. "Even if she's angry, she deserves to know her father is asking for her, that he's sorry, that he loved her mother." Mama Beezy stared at Hana. "And what do you get from this, nurse? Tell me the truth. Does he promise you money, a piece of his land? What is your price?" "Nothing," Hana said, and the word was so pure and true that it echoed in the small room. "I get nothing. I am a nurse. I made a promise to my own mother, who died too young, that I would help people. I see a man dying, Mama Beezy. He has a wound that no medicine can fix. Only his daughter can. I am not here for money. I am here for peace, his, and maybe, hers." The old woman stared, her gaze unwavering. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Baba Tundi watched from the corner silent. Then Mama Beezy nodded, a slow deep nod of acceptance. "You are not like the others," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "You have kind eyes. You have Amara's eyes." Hana let out a sob, a release of all the tension. "Chioma, she did it," Mama Beezy said, a note of fierce pride in her voice. "She fulfilled her mother's dream. After Amara died, Chioma kept going. She finished her schooling. She is a nurse, just like you." Hana looked up, shocked. "A nurse?" "Yes." The old woman smiled, a true sad smile. "She works at a small clinic in the next town, in Onitsha. She helps the poor, just like her mother did. She doesn't use the name Okoro. She uses her mother's name. She is Chioma no Abusi." "Her address," Hana breathed, her heart pounding. "Please Mama, do you have her address?" "I do," Mama Beezy said. She leaned forward. "But I give this to you, with a warning. Be careful. I told you, she is stone. She is not a little girl waiting for a father. She is a woman who survived a war. Do not go to her with soft words and fairy tales. Go to her with the truth. Show her the certificate. Show her the photo. It may not be enough. She may slam the door in your face." "I have to try," Hana said. "I know." The old woman reached into a small carved wooden box on her table. She pulled out a small crumpled faded piece of paper. She unfolded it and handed it to Hana. On it was an address for a clinic. Grace and Mercy Medical Center. Anacha. Hana took it as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. Now, go, Mama Beezy said, getting to her feet, leaning on her stick. Leave this village before the sun sets, and more eyes see you. Do not tell Chioma I sent you. She will be angry, I interfered. Tell her, just tell her you found the house. Tell her what you found in the locked room. That will be enough. Hana stood, bowing deeply to the old woman. Thank you, Mama. Thank you. Do not thank me, Mama Beezy said, touching Hana's shoulder. Just when you see her, when you see my Chioma, tell her Mama Beezy still prays for her every day. Tell her that. I will, Hana promised. She turned and left, Baba Tundi following her out. She stepped out of the dark, smoky room, and back into the blazing, unforgiving sunlight, the address clutched tight in her hand. Hana did not sleep. She couldn't. She had spent the night in the house of frozen time, sitting on the small, dusty bed in the locked room, the scent of Amara's past all around her. The address Mama Beezy had given her, Grace and Mercy Medical Center, Anache, was clutched in her hand. The birth certificate and the photograph were in her lap. Her mind was a whirlwind. She had the proof. She had a destination. But she was torn. Emeka was dying. She was a nurse. Her place was at his bedside, but he had sent her. This mission was its own form of care, a deeper, more profound healing that no medicine could offer. She was terrified of what she would find. Mama Beezy's words echoed in her head. She is stone. She is full of her father's fire and all of her mother's pain. How did one speak to a person made of stone? What words could possibly break through 28 years of anger? She was so lost in these thoughts, watching the pre-dawn light turn the dusty windows from black to gray, that the vibration of her phone on the mattress made her jump, a small cry escaping her lips. Her heart seized. It was a text. From Bola, one of the junior nurses at Apex Care. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Hana, where are you? Matron is panicking. Chief's condition got worse last night. He kept asking for you. Now his son Bolan has taken control. He says his father is sedated and is blocking all visitors. Even Matron can't get in. It's bad. Hana's blood ran cold. Sedated. Bolan has taken control. She scrambled to her feet, the exhaustion and fear vanishing, replaced by a surge of pure cold adrenaline. They were silencing him. Bolan, knowing his father was vulnerable, was making his move. He was cutting Emeka off, ensuring he couldn't make any more changes, couldn't speak to anyone, couldn't see his daughter. If Emeka Okoro died now, while she was here, it would all be for nothing. He would die without peace, and Chioma would never know the truth. The wound would remain open, festering forever. Time had run out. She shoved the certificate, the photo, and the key deep into her bag, her hands shaking violently. She ran from the locked room, pulled the door shut, the click of the lock sounding final, and fled the house, not even pausing to look back. She ran to Baba Tunde's house with the green door, banging on it until the old man emerged, his eyes wide with sleep and alarm. I have to go now. To Anache, she said, her voice breathless. There is no time. The bus is too slow. I need a motorbike. An Okada. Can you find one? Baba Tunde saw the panic in her eyes, the desperate, unshakable resolve. He didn't ask questions. He nodded once, disappearing for a few moments and returning with a young man who was rubbing sleep from his eyes. Minutes later, Hana was on the back of the motorbike, her arms wrapped tightly around her bag, the bag pressed against the driver's back. The engine sputtered to life, and they shot off, leaving Osunla village behind in a cloud of red dust. The wind slapped her face, stinging her eyes and whipping her scarf away. Dust got into her mouth, her nose. The bike bounced and rattled on the uneven, potholed road, and every jolt sent a spike of fear through her. But they were moving. They were moving fast. The journey, which would have taken hours by bus, was a blur of green foliage, red earth, and the agonizing high-pitched whine of the small engine. When they finally roared into the bustling, noisy, crowded streets of Onitshe, Hana was stiff, sore, and covered in a fine layer of grime. The city was a sharp contrast to Osenlay, a place of commerce, of shouting, of survival. The rider stopped in front of a small one-story building. The white paint was peeling, and the blue-painted letters over the entrance were faded but clear. Grace and Mercy Medical Center. It didn't look fancy like Apex Care. It looked necessary. It looked loved. Hana paid the rider with the last of the cash Emeka had given her. Her hands still shaking, she pushed open the simple wooden door and stepped inside. The waiting area was small, with only 3 worn blue plastic chairs. The air smelled sharply of bleach and a faint, underlying scent of sickness. A young mother sat on one chair, rocking a feverish, whimpering baby. A young boy sat on the floor, his leg wrapped in a crude but clean bandage. Behind a small wooden desk, a woman in a nurse's uniform looked up. "Good morning," the woman said, her voice tired but kind. "How can I help you?" Hana's throat was dry. "I'm looking for Nurse Chioma," she said, her voice coming out as a croak. "Chioma Nawabuizi." The nurse's eyes narrowed slightly, becoming professional, guarded. "She is attending to a patient. Can I take a message?" "Who is asking?" "My name is Hana Loyal. I'm a nurse too. From Kenta City." Hana leaned forward, her desperation cutting through her fear. "Please, it's a personal emergency. It's about her family. It's urgent." The word family seemed to land. The nurse studied Hana's dust-covered, frantic face. She saw the nurse's ID clipped to Hana's dress. She nodded once. "Please wait." The nurse disappeared through a beaded curtain. Hana stood in the middle of the small room, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was it. This was the moment. The woman made of stone. A minute later, the beaded curtain was pushed aside, and there she was. Hana forgot to breathe. It was her. It was Amara. The same wide, intelligent eyes, the same gentle, full mouth, the same set of her jaw. But where Amara's photo was soft, hopeful, and yielding, this woman was not. Chioma Nawabuizi was tall, her nurse's uniform practical and impeccably clean. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, professional bun. Her face was strong, and her eyes, Amara's eyes, were guarded, intelligent, and deeply, profoundly tired. They held no softness. They were the eyes of a survivor, of a fighter, of a woman who had seen too much and expected nothing. She looked at Hana with an expression of intense, weary suspicion. "You asked for me?" Chioma's voice was low, crisp, and held no warmth. "Yes," Hana said. "Nurse Nawabuizi. My name is Hana Loyal. Can we talk? Somewhere private?" Chioma's gaze swept over Hana once more. The dust, the fear, the city clothes. She didn't speak. She simply turned and gestured with her head toward a small door marked office. Hana followed her in. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a small metal desk, 2 mismatched chairs, and a metal shelf overflowing with medical supplies and textbooks. A small fan hummed in the corner, pushing the hot, thick air around. Chioma did not sit. She stood behind the desk, her arms crossed, a clear barrier. She was waiting. "Talk," Chioma said. "I have patience." "My name is Hana Loyal," Hana said again, her voice shaking. "I'm a senior nurse at Apex Care Hospital in Kenta City." "Kenta City," Chioma said, her voice flat. "A long way from home. What does a nurse from a big, rich hospital want with a small-town clinic?" Hana knew there was no gentle way to do this. The stone had to be struck. I came to speak to you." Hana took a deep breath. "About your father." Chioma's expression did not change. It did not flicker. It simply hardened. The air in the room became brittle, cold. "I don't have a father," she said, her voice perfectly level. "Yes," Hana said, her own voice soft but insistent. "You do. His name is Emeka, Chief Emeka Okoro." The name landed in the small hot room like a block of ice. The silence that followed was absolute. Chioma just stared, her eyes narrowing into slits. She looked in that moment dangerous. Get out, Chioma said, her voice a low, threatening whisper. Please, Hana said. Just let me show you. This was the moment. With her heart in her throat, Hana swung her bag onto the desk. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the zipper. She pulled out the contents, one by one, and laid them on the metal desk between them. The sound of each object landing was unnaturally loud. First, the faded photograph of Amara and the baby. Second, the heavy, ornate silver key with its red ribbon. And third, the folded, official birth certificate. Chioma's eyes followed each item. When the birth certificate was placed on the desk, she flinched. She looked at the photo of her mother, her face unreadable. She looked at the key, confused. Then her eyes settled on the folded certificate. Slowly, as if moving against her own will, Chioma's hand uncrossed. Her fingers long and capable, a nurse's hands reached out. They hovered, trembling over the photograph. She touched the image of her mother, a feather-light brush of her fingertip. Then her gaze fixed on the certificate. She didn't open it. She just saw the government stamp. Hana could see the war happening behind her eyes. This was not a lawyer. This was not a trick she had seen before. These were things, intimate things, real things. We were inside Chioma's mind. The fortress she had built around her heart, the one made of stone, was being breached. That's Mama's picture. The one she kept in her Bible. The one she cried over. And this paper. No, it's a lie. It's a trick. Who is this woman? Another one of his hyenas, sent to what? Buy my silence, dig up the past. But she's a nurse. Her eyes, they're not cold. They're frightened. Where did she get this? Where did she get that name? The name of the ghost who ruined us. The name Mama was so afraid of, the name that meant waiting for someone who never ever came. Not for my graduation. Not when Mama was sick. Not for the funeral. He never came. And now this woman, this nurse, brings his name, brings these things, into my clinic, into the place I built from nothing. Where? Chioma's voice was a choked, dangerous sound. Did you get these? I came from Osunled village, Hana said, her voice steady and calm. I went to the house, the one with the blue door. I met Baba Tunde, and I met Mama Bisi. The name Mama Bisi visibly shook Chioma. Her composure broke for a fraction of a second. He, your father, he gave me the key, Hana continued, pointing to the silver key, the key to the locked room. Your room. I found these in the drawer, under your mother's scarf. Chioma stared at the items, the stone wall crumbling. My mother is dead, she whispered, her voice raw. She died 6 years ago. She died tired, and she died broke. He's too late. I know, Hana said softly. Mama Bisi told me. I am so sorry. Chioma looked up, her eyes blazing with a sudden hot, furious grief. He sent men before you know, she hissed. Did he tell you that? Men in sharp suits with briefcases full of money. They came here. They offered to take care of us. My mother hid me. We ran like dogs. Is that what you are? A new tactic? The soft one? The nurse? No, Hana said, standing her ground, her voice firm. I am not here for money. He didn't send money. She leaned forward, her own eyes pleading. He's dying. I told you. He's at Apex Care right now, hooked to tubes and machines. He had a heart attack. He is alone and he is scared, and he regrets everything. She pushed the photograph closer to Chioma. He gave me this. He gave me the key. He didn't send a lawyer, because he knew you wouldn't believe them. He sent me another nurse. He trusted me. He asked me to find his daughter. Chioma was silent. She looked down at the photo of her mother smiling, an image from a time before the pain. She looked at the birth certificate, the official, undeniable proof of who she was. You don't know, Chioma whispered, her voice breaking, the stone finally cracking. You don't know how many nights I watched my mother cry over that photograph. You don't know how many lies she had to tell me, just so I wouldn't hate myself for being born. You don't know what it's like, to wait your entire life, for someone who never ever comes. No, Hana said, her own tears falling now. I can't know that. But I do know this. She reached out, and nurse to nurse, placed her hand on Chioma's trembling arm. He is not asking for a hug. He is not asking for you to love him. He is just asking for a chance, a single chance, to look you in the eye and say I'm sorry with his own mouth. That is all. Hana then told her about the text, and we don't have much time. His son Bolan has taken control of the hospital. He's got his father sedated. They are blocking all visitors. If we are going to see him, if you are ever going to see him, we have to go. We have to go now. The finality of it hung in the air. This was the last chance. Chioma stood frozen, the internal battle raging. He's dying. Good. Let him. Let him feel what Mama felt. But he sent her. He remembered. He kept the key. He wants to see me. Not to erase me. To see me. I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for Mama. I'm doing it for me. I will not be the one who hides. I will face him. I will stand in front of him. Not as a little girl waiting for a father, but as the woman I am. The woman she raised. He will see me. He will see her in me. And he will know that we survived. She looked at Hana, her eyes, Amara's eyes, now clear and sharp with a new terrible painful resolve. She nodded once, a single sharp, decisive nod. Let me pack a bag, she said. The journey back to Kenta City was a blur of suffocating silence and speed. Hana had managed to hire a private taxi, a battered Peugeot, whose driver, sensing the life and death urgency in her eyes, was pushing the car far beyond its normal limits. They sat in the back, two nurses on an impossible mission, hurtling down the highway that separated two entirely different worlds. Chioma did not speak. She sat rigid, staring out the window, her body thrumming with a tension that was almost visible. In her lap, her strong nurse's hands, hands that could calm a feverish child or set a bone, were clenched around the faded photograph of her mother. She was no longer just Chioma Nuabuiz, the pillar of the Onitsha clinic. She was Chioma Okoro, a name she had spent her entire life hating, and she was racing toward the ghost who had defined her by his absence. Her mind was a battlefield. He's dying. He's dying. For 28 years, I wanted him to suffer. I prayed for it. I wanted him to know the pain Mama felt. Now he is, and I'm racing to his side. Why? Why am I doing this? For Mama? To see her name spoken? Or for me? Do I want to see him? Or do I want him to see me? I want him to see what he abandoned. I want him to see that we survived. That I survived. I am not a secret. I am not a ghost. I am his daughter, and he will look me in the eye before he dies. Hana sat beside her, her own internal storm just as violent. Her phone was clutched in her hand. She read the text from Bola over and over. Bolan has taken control. Sedated. The word sedated was a knife in her gut. It wasn't medical. It was a prison sentence. Bolan was chemically isolating his father, ensuring he couldn't sign any more papers, couldn't speak to any lawyers, couldn't acknowledge any long-lost daughters. It was a cold, calculated, and final move. Hana knew the pharmacology, a heavy sedative drip given to a man in his condition, with his weak heart. It wasn't just sedation. It was a slow, quiet, legal execution. We're running out of time, Hana thought, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked at Chioma. This woman, who had been a myth just 36 hours ago, was now sitting beside her, her entire world balanced on a knife's edge. I did this. I brought her out. I've unearthed this past. If we're too late, if he dies before he sees her, I haven't healed anything. I've just broken it all over again. But worse. How much further? Chioma's voice was rough, cutting the silence. We're close, Hana replied, her voice tight. The driver knows the way. We're on the outskirts of Kenta City now. Chioma nodded, her gaze returning to the window, to the sprawling, wealthy suburbs that were a universe away from her small clinic. When they finally arrived at Apex Care Hospital, it was late afternoon. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long, dramatic shadows across the gleaming white facade. The air was cool, but Chioma felt like she was on fire. The lobby was a different world. It was vast, cold, and gleaming. The floors were polished marble that echoed their footsteps. The air smelled of money, expensive cleaning chemicals, and the faint, sterile scent of controlled sickness. Chioma, in her simple dress and hoodie, her shoes still carrying the red dust of Osanel, felt like a trespasser. She pulled her hoodie up, hiding her face, her resemblance to Amara. Hana, however, was transformed. This was her territory. Her fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp nursing authority. She put her scarf low over her face, nodded curtly to the receptionists who stared at her, and led Chioma, not to the main elevators, but to a staff-only stairwell. "They'll be watching the main entrance," Hana whispered, her voice all business. "The ICU wing is on the 3rd floor. Follow me and don't say a word." They climbed the concrete stairs, their footsteps echoing. When they emerged onto the 3rd floor, the atmosphere was different. It was hushed, tense. The normal quiet bustle of the ICU was gone. The nurses at the station looked up when they saw Hana, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock, fear, and something like accusation. The nurse who abandoned her post. Hana ignored them. She walked with a purpose that parted the air in front of her, pulling Chioma in her wake. They turned the corner toward the VIP suite, and stopped. The way was blocked. 2 new bodyguards stood in front of Chief Okoro's door. These were not the men from the first night. These were younger, bigger, and wore ill-fitting suits. They looked like bouncers, not professional security. They were Boland's men. One of them held up a hand, a massive flat palm. "Halt. No visitors. By order of Mr. Boland Okoro. I am Nurse Hana Loyal," Hana said, her voice like ice, pulling out her hospital ID. "I am his primary nurse. I am going in." The guard barely glanced at the ID. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Nurse Loyal. Yeah, we heard about you. The one who ran off. You're not on the list. Nobody is. Now, turn around and go." "You don't understand," Hana said, stepping forward. "His life is in danger. I need to check his vitals." "His vitals are just fine," a new voice said. Boland Okoro stepped out from a nearby waiting room, holding a cup of coffee. His tie was loose, his hair was messy, and he looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp, and when he saw Hana, his face twisted into a mask of pure triumphant rage. "You," he spat. "You actually came back. After abandoning your patient, you have the nerve. I've already spoken to the matron. You're fired. Do you hear me? Fired. You don't have that authority," Hana said, her voice trembling but holding firm. "I am his son. I am his next of kin. I have all the authority now." Boland shouted, and the few nurses at the station flinched. He took a step closer, his eyes dark. "Get her out of here." And he finally seemed to notice the figure half hidden behind Hana. "And who the hell is this? What, did you bring a beggar from the street? A prayer woman? Get out." This was the moment. Chioma stepped out from behind Hana. She pulled her hoodie down. The hallway went utterly, completely silent. The only sound was the distant, steady beep of a monitor from another room. Boland froze. His mouth, which had been open in a snarl, hung slack. His coffee cup tilted, spilling hot liquid onto his hand. He didn't even notice. He just stared. He was staring at a ghost. He was staring at the woman his mother had cursed. The woman who had been his father's single greatest secret. He was staring at Amara Noabues. "You," he whispered, his face draining of all color. It's not possible. It's a trick. A cheap trick." Chioma took a step forward. Her eyes, Amara's eyes, were blazing with 28 years of condensed fury and pain. Her voice was not a whisper. It was low, steady, and it cut through the sterile air like a surgeon's scalpel. "My name," she said, "is Chioma Amara Noabues. You will not call me a beggar, and you will not call me a trick." "She is his daughter, Boland," Hana said, her voice shaking as she held up the folded birth certificate. "And we are going in to see him." Now, Boland's shock vaporized, replaced by sheer primal panic. This was it. The will, the inheritance, the entire empire. It was all in jeopardy, standing right in front of him in a cheap hoodie. "No," he roared. "You're an imposter, a fraud. Guards, stop them. Don't let them in. I'll have you all arrested. He lunged for the door, to block it with his own body. But he had underestimated them. He had underestimated the righteous, desperate fury of a daughter who had waited her entire life for this moment. Move, Chioma said, and she shoved him. It wasn't a small push, it was a full-bodied shove, fueled by decades of grief. Bolin caught off balance, stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. The guards, stunned by the sudden violence, reached for them. But Hana was already there, her ID badge swiping the electronic lock. The light turned green. Hana slammed her shoulder against the door, pushing it open, and pulled Chioma in after her. Lock it, she screamed. And Chioma slammed the deadbolt just as Bolin and the guards began to pound on the other side. They stood, panting in the silence of the room. It was dark. The curtains were drawn. The machines were beeping, but slowly, too slowly. And on the bed, Emeka Okoro lay still. He was pale, waxy, and impossibly small. His eyes were closed. The oxygen mask fogged with each shallow breath. "Oh God, no," Hana whispered. She ran to the bedside. Her nurse's instincts took over instantly. She looked at the IV pole. There it was, a heavy drip bag of propofol, a powerful sedative, and the drip was wide open. "He's not sedated, he's being overdosed," she hissed, her fingers immediately finding the roller clamp on the IV line and snapping it shut, cutting off the flow. "Idris," she said, gently but firmly shaking his shoulder. "Sir." "Emeka, wake up. It's Hana. I'm here. I'm back." The pounding on the door was frantic. "Open this door. Open it now, or I'll break it down." Bolin was screaming. Chioma stood frozen at the foot of the bed, her hands clenched at her sides. This was not the reunion she had imagined. This was not the confrontation. This was just a small old man, being murdered by his son. "Emeka," Hana called again, louder. "I'm back. And I brought her. I brought your daughter." At the word daughter, something flickered. Emeka's eyelids fluttered. The sedative was strong, but his will, his 28-year-old regret, was stronger. He groaned, a low painful sound, and his head moved on the pillow. His eyes opened. They were groggy, unfocused, clouded with drugs. They drifted from the white ceiling to Hana's tear-streaked face, and then to the tall figure standing at the foot of his bed. His eyes tried to focus. He blinked again, and then he saw her. His breath hitched. His eyes, though clouded, widened. He saw Amara. He saw the ghost he had been chasing, the love he had abandoned. "Imara," he whispered. The word was a breath, a prayer. You came for me. I'm dreaming." Chioma's face, which had been a mask of stone, broke. The anger, the rage, the years of hatred, it all shattered, and all that was left was the small lost child inside. A sob ripped from her chest. She stumbled forward, her knees hitting the side of the bed. "No," she wept, her voice cracking. "I'm not Amara. I'm Chioma, Papa. I'm Chioma." She didn't even realize she had called him Papa. Emeka's eyes cleared. The fog of the drugs was burned away by a single devastating jolt of recognition. He stared at her, seeing her, her eyes, her mouth, his daughter, alive. "Here, Chioma," he whispered. Tears, hot and real, instantly filled his eyes, streaming down his temples into his gray hair. His hand, thin and translucent, lifted from the sheet. It trembled violently, reaching. Chioma grabbed his hand, clutching it in both of hers, pressing it to her cheek. His skin was cold, papery. You came," he rasped, his voice stronger now, fueled by a final impossible surge of adrenaline. "You're beautiful, just like her." "I'm here," Chioma sobbed, her tears falling onto his hand. "I'm here. I'm so sorry." "No, I'm sorry," he whispered, his grip tightening. "I was a coward, afraid. I ruined everything. I failed you. I failed Amara. I know." Chioma choked out. "I know. It's okay. I waited for you. My whole life, I waited. I should have come," he breathed. A terrible wet cough rattled his chest. The monitor above his head, which had been slow, suddenly became erratic, the numbers flashing red. Hana saw it, her hand flying to her mouth. Vitak, his heart was giving out. He doesn't have time, Hana whispered, her own tears blurring her vision. Chioma knew. As a nurse, she knew what those alarms meant. She leaned in close, her forehead touching his, her tears mixing with his. It's okay, she whispered, her voice fierce and loving. I'm here now, I see you, I'm here. I forgive you, Papa, I forgive you. Mama, Mama forgives you. You can rest. It's okay, you can rest. Emeka looked into her eyes. He saw his daughter. He saw Amara. He saw his peace. A small faint smile touched his lips. The deep lines of pain and regret on his face seemed to smooth out, to just relax. I can rest, he whispered. His eyes held hers. Amara, I can rest now. His hand went limp in hers, his eyes still open, went vacant, and the monitor above his head, which had been beeping in a wild panic, suddenly stopped. A single long piercing inhuman beat filled the room, the flat line. Chioma just stared, frozen. Hana moved, her fingers instantly on his neck, pressing against his carotid artery. She looked at Chioma, her face a mask of grief. No pulse, no pulse. Chioma, he's gone. At that exact horrifying moment, the pounding on the door ceased. There was a crash, as the lock was broken, and the door burst open. But it wasn't Bolan, it was a reporter, a man with a wild look in his eyes, his phone held high, the camera flash already firing. Flash, 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 blinding them in the dim room. Is it true? The reporter shouted, his voice a grotesque intrusion. Is this the secret daughter of Chief Okoro? Did he confess? Did he change the will? The sound, the shouting, the beep of the flatline alarm, the flashing light, was a nightmare. Get out! Hana screamed, her grief turning to pure rage, as she launched herself at the man. Get him! Bolan's voice roared from the hallway. More flashes, more shouting. Security guards poured in, grabbing the reporter, who was still trying to film. The hallway outside had exploded. It was full of people, more reporters, cameras, shouting. Someone had tipped them off. The secret was out. Chioma was still on her knees, her father's hand still in hers, her body trembling, her face frozen in shock, bathed in the relentless flashing camera lights. Bolan pushed through the chaos. He stopped, his eyes taking in the scene. The flat line on the monitor, his father's still pale face, and Chioma kneeling by the bed. His face, which had been red with rage, went pale with a cold, calculating fury. He looked at Chioma, his voice dropping to a low, terrifying hiss that cut through the noise. You, he said, pointing a shaking finger. You did this. You killed him. The single, unbroken, high-pitched B-he-see, if the flatline alarm was the only real sound in the room. It was an unholy siren that cut through the chaos, a definitive electronic scream that announced the end of a life and the beginning of a war. Everything else was a grotesque, flashing nightmare. The reporter who had burst in first was still shouting, his phone held high, its flash popping with a relentless, blinding rhythm. Flash, flash, flash. Each burst of light illuminated the horrific tableau. Chief Emeka Okoro, waxy and still on the bed, the red flat line on the monitor, and Chioma kneeling on the floor, her body rigid, her face a mask of fractured, uncomprehending shock, still clutching her father's limp, cooling hand. You killed him! Bolan's accusation, a raw, guttural scream of grief and rage, hung in the poisoned air. He pointed a shaking finger at Chioma, his face contorted. You came in here, you did this. Get out. It was Hana. Her voice was unrecognizable, a raw, primal shriek that ripped from her throat. She was no longer the quiet nurse. She was a lioness, her grief and fury erupting in a single protective wave. She launched herself not at the reporter but at Bolan, shoving him back toward the door with a strength that shocked him. Get out! All of you! Get out! Now! Security guards, finally realizing the severity of the breach, poured in, forming a human wall. They grabbed the shouting reporter, dragging him backward into the hallway. They began to push Bolin, who was still screaming about murder, out of the room. The hallway outside had exploded into a bedlam of shouting, more camera flashes, and the sound of running feet. And then the door was slammed shut. The deadbolt was thrown, and silence fell. A heavy, suffocating, absolute silence, broken only by the sound of two women breathing. One, Hana, was panting, her adrenaline crashing, her body shaking. The other, Chioma, was not breathing at all. She was just frozen, her wide, unblinking eyes still fixed on her father's face. The matron, Mrs. Ibube, stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, her face ashen. She had been swept in with the final push of security. Her eyes took in the scene with professional, numbed horror. The dead chief, the silent monitor, the weeping, unknown woman, and Nurse Hana Loyal, her best, quietest nurse, standing over them like a wild thing, her uniform rumpled, her face streaked with tears and rage. "Hana," the matron whispered. "Call it." Hana choked out, her voice breaking. "Call the time of death, and make them go away." Mrs. Ibube, moving with the slow, practiced motions of a veteran, stepped forward. She checked her watch. She placed her fingers on Emeka's neck. She shone a small light into his unmoving eyes. She nodded, her face grim. "Time of death," she announced to the empty room. 7:14 p.m. She walked to the monitor, and with a single respectful press of a button, the high-pitched flatline alarm was finally silenced. The silence that replaced it was infinitely louder, infinitely heavier. It was the sound of a life truly, finally, over. The days that followed were a waking nightmare. The funeral was a circus, a chaotic, high-profile media event that was less about grieving a man and more about dissecting a scandal. Hana and Chioma did not attend. They couldn't. They were in hiding, fugitives in Hana's small, cramped flat. The curtains were drawn, the door double-locked. The city outside, which had been indifferent to their existence just days before, was now screaming Chioma's name. The news was a firestorm, and Bolin was feeding the flames. "They're calling me a killer," Chioma whispered. It was the first thing she had said in 24 hours. She was sitting on a small mat on Hana's floor, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the muted television screen. The headlines screamed back at her. "The Billionaire's Secret, Daughter or Gold Digger. Deathbed Drama, Okoro Family Cries Foul Play. The Mystery Nurse. Who is Hana Loyal, and what did she stand to gain?" A grainy, terrible photo, the one taken by the reporter in those first few seconds, was plastered everywhere. Chioma, her face a mask of shock, kneeling over the bed. Bolin, in a televised interview, his eyes cold with grief, had called her the imposter. He released a statement claiming his beloved father, in his final vulnerable days, had been manipulated by a sophisticated team of con artists, led by a disgraced nurse. "He called me Papa," Chioma whispered, her voice hollow as she stared at Bolin's face on the screen. "He held my hand, and now the world thinks I murdered him for his money." Hana sat down beside her, her heart a cold, heavy stone. She felt a crushing weight of guilt. She had done this. She had dug up the past. She had brought this storm crashing down on this woman's head. "Chioma," Hana said, her voice low and fierce, "listen to me. You did not do this. You did what he asked. You gave him the only thing he wanted. You gave him peace." "He's dead," Chioma said, her voice flat. "He died free," Hana insisted, grabbing her hand. "He died looking at his daughter. He died with forgiveness in his heart. You heard him. He saw you. That is the truth. This," she gestured to the television, "this is just noise. It's the wind. It's the sound of angry, grieving men. It will pass." The wind, however, did not pass. It became a hurricane. A week later, they were summoned to the offices of Okoro Holdings' primary legal counsel. Escorted by a private security guard Hana had been forced to hire, they walked through a silent, disapproving lobby, into a vast, cold boardroom on the top floor. The room was all glass and dark mahogany, with a view of Kenta City that made people look like ants. Bolin was there, flanked by his two younger brothers, and a team of sharp, aggressive lawyers. Their faces were identical masks of cold fury and contempt. The chief counsel, Mr. Benkol, the same man Hana had seen at the hospital, sat at the head of the table. His face was neutral, professional. He held up a simple, sealed red plastic folder. Hana recognized it instantly. It was the folder from Emeka's drawer. "This, Mr. Benkol said, his voice cutting through the silence, is the final addendum to Chief Emeka Okoro's will. It was delivered to my office by his private security, the morning after he was admitted. His instructions were explicit. It was not to be opened until the event of his death, and only in the presence of his son Bolin Okoro, and a woman named Chioma Amara Nwabui." Bolin scoffed, a short, ugly sound. "It's a fake. It's invalid. My father was clearly not of sound mind. He was being manipulated by that nurse. She probably wrote it herself. The signature, Mr. Okoro," Mr. Benkol said calmly, "as well as the supporting fingerprint on the last page, have been verified by 3 independent forensic experts. It is genuine. It is binding." He broke the seal. He opened the folder. He put on his glasses and began to read. It was simple. It was brutal. It revoked all previous divisions of assets. It began with a long handwritten paragraph acknowledging Chioma Amara Okoro, born Nwabui, as his firstborn biological and beloved child. It asked, in his own words, for his other children's forgiveness for his years of secrecy and cowardice, and then it allocated 45% of the entire estate, including controlling shares in Okoro Holdings, to her. Bolin and his brothers were to share the rest. The room exploded. Bolin was on his feet, his chair crashing backward. He was shouting, his face purple. "This is insanity. It's a fraud. I demand a DNA test. A legal, court-ordered test. This woman is a fraud. I will prove it. I will drag her name through every court in this country until she is in prison." Chioma, who had been sitting as still as a stone, finally looked up. Her voice was not loud. It was quiet, clear, and cold, and it sliced through Bolin's rage like a scalpel. "I agree," she said. "We will do the test." The DNA test was cold, clinical, and humiliating. A doctor, lawyers from both sides, all watching. Chioma sat in a sterile chair, her mouth being swabbed by a stranger. She felt like an animal being tagged, her very blood put on trial. "I am his daughter," she thought, her anger a cold, hard ember, "and I am being forced to prove, in a lab, that my mother's pain was real." The wait for the results was agonizing. But when they came, they were absolute. 99.999%. Undeniable. The sister who didn't exist was now, legally, his sister. Bolin's legal challenges evaporated. The storm of noise, the accusations, the public fury, it all just stopped. A month later, there was a quiet knock on Hana's apartment door. It was late. Hana opened it, her heart leaping into her throat. It was Bolin. He was alone. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He was in simple jeans and a black shirt. He looked small, exhausted, defeated. His eyes were red-rimmed. Can I speak to her?" he asked, his voice rough, humbled. Chioma came to the door, her arms crossed, her face guarded. They stared at each other for a long, silent moment. The ghost of their father stood between them. "I'm not here to fight," Bolin said, looking down at his shoes. "The lawyers, they're handling things. The transfers." He looked up, and his eyes were full of a new, confused pain. "She really does look just like her. The woman in the old photos, the ones he hid, locked in his study. That was your mother." "Yes," Chioma said. "My mother. She hated her." Bolin said, not as an accusation, but as a dull, tired fact. "She knew. I think she always knew." He sighed. "She used to say, 'Your father had a weak moment with a poor girl. That's all. I guess I just believed it. I was a child. I didn't know I had a sister." He looked at Chioma, and all the anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary resignation. I still don't know what to do with you. But you were there. At the end. I wasn't. I was in Asalwas. I was in the hallway, shouting about money. A long, heavy silence stretched between them. The lawyers say, we'll need to meet, he said, turning to leave. Go over the holdings. I'm not fighting you anymore. He paused at the door, his back to her. Just one thing, please. The house. The big one in Mama. The one he loved. Don't sell it. It was our home. Before all this, Chioma, the woman of stone, felt the last of her anger dissolve, leaving only a shared strange grief. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Okay, she said softly. I won't. Bolan nodded, his shoulders slumped, and he walked away. Life settled into a new strange rhythm. The public lost interest, moving on to the next scandal. The cameras went away. Chioma, now one of the wealthiest women in the country, did not move to Kenta City. She did not buy a man. She did not change her name. She used a significant portion of her inheritance to expand the Grace and Mercy Medical Center, building a new modern pediatric wing and a women's health center. She hired new doctors and staff, offering free care to the families who, like her and her mother, had nothing. She gave a large anonymous donation to Mama Bisi, enough to care for her for the rest of her life. And she set up the Amara Nwabuese Scholarship, a fund for young women from rural villages to go to nursing school. She still lived in her small flat, but she smiled more. She laughed sometimes. She had finally, after 28 years, put down the heavy invisible burden she had been forced to carry. She knew where she came from, and she had forgiven the man who left. One afternoon, Hana, who had quietly returned to her job at Apex Care, received a package at the nurse's station. It was from Mr. Bankel's office. It had no return address, just a thick black envelope sealed with wax. That night, in her flat, she opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten on heavy, expensive stationery. The handwriting was shaky, weak, but unmistakable. It was from Emeka. He had written it the day he gave her the key, and given it to his lawyer with his will. To Hana Loyal, the woman who gave me peace. Hana's hand flew to her mouth. She sat down slowly and began to read. My dearest Hana, I knew I might not live long enough to say goodbye. But if you are reading this, it means you fulfilled your promise. It means you found her. It means in my last days you did what no lawyer, no son, and no friend could do. You saw me. You didn't see a name or a bank account. You saw a sick old man, drowning in his own regret. And you stayed. You listened. You did not judge. This world needs more hearts like yours. You carry your mother's promise in you, and it is a powerful, beautiful thing. I did not have much left to give that truly mattered, but I left something for you. Not money, not land from the estate. A small private piece of land near Asaba. It is quiet. It is by the river. I bought it many years ago, thinking I might one day build a small house there, away from the noise. I never did. But you will know what to do with it. You will find peace there, just as I found peace in your presence. Thank you, Hana. You did what I was too weak to do. You fixed what I broke. Thank you. I can rest now. Emeka. Tears rolled down Hana's face, dripping onto the thick paper. She didn't wipe them. She just folded the letter, holding it to her chest. Tucked inside the envelope was a folded deed of ownership and a small modest check from his private account. For your troubles. 2 weeks later, Hana stood on that piece of land. It was exactly as he'd described. It was quiet. It wasn't large, just a flat green space, with a few large mango trees, and a wide, beautiful view of the calm brown river stretching into the horizon. The air smelled of fresh earth and water. She took off her shoes and stepped barefoot onto the soil. It was warm. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, her mind, which was always filled with charts and schedules, and the needs of others, went completely silent. She felt peace. So, a voice said behind her, "This is the famous kingdom." Hana opened her eyes. Chioma was standing there, smiling, holding a small bag with 2 bottles of cold malt. "You came," Hana smiled. "Of course I came," Chioma said, walking up beside her. "You think I'd miss seeing the land my father gave to his other favorite nurse?" They laughed, a free, easy sound. They sat under the biggest tree, sipping their drinks, watching the river flow by. I'm leaving Apex Care, Hana said softly, after a long comfortable silence. Chioma turned. What? Why? Because of this, Hana said, gesturing to the land. I want to build something here, something small. Maybe a small healing center, a place where people can come when they're tired, burnt-out workers, sick old women, people who just hurt, somewhere they can rest and recover. Not just their bodies, but their hearts too. Chioma's eyes lit up. Like a retreat. Yes, Hana nodded. Simple, quiet, true. I'll call it the Idris Peace Haven. A place to rest. I'll help you, Chioma said immediately. You don't have to, Hana said. This is your new life. I want to, Chioma insisted, bumping her shoulder. What else am I going to do with all this money? Besides, my mother's scholarship will need to send its nurses somewhere for training. I think this is the perfect place. They looked at each other, two nurses, bound by a story that had started long before they were born. They smiled. 3 months later, the signboard was up. Idris Peace Haven, Healing and Rest Center. It was not a hospital, it was a collection of small clean rooms, a communal kitchen, and a large, open veranda facing the river. It was soft and warm, and quiet. There was no judgment. There were no flashing lights. There was just peace. And one day, as Hana was watering the new flowers, a small boy came walking up the path. He was no older than 8. He was skinny, his clothes were torn, and his eyes were old and silent. He just stood there watching her. Hana put down her watering can and smiled, walking over to him. Hello, she said gently. What's your name? The boy didn't speak. He just held out a crumpled, dirty piece of paper. Hana unfolded it. It read in shaky, childish handwriting. I heard this is where hearts get fixed. Hana's eyes filled with tears. She smiled at the boy, a smile of pure, profound recognition. She took his small, dirty hand in hers. You heard right, she said. You're in the right place. She led him inside, and as the door closed behind them, the breeze from the river rustled the leaves in the mango trees, carrying the faint, distant sound of laughter. The last wish had been fulfilled. The wound was healed, and a new story had just begun.